Can we see our beautiful faces? Okay, thank you, Maureen. Yeah. Um, Razak is not here yet. Winifred, one of the panelists, is not here yet.
Yes, Miss Chizoba is not here. Let me.
I want to confirm that for the panelists, I want to confirm that we all got the list of questions.
That we all got what?
The list of questions.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And we're prepared to answer all the questions.
We'll do our best.
Okay. Really, it's just to do sound check to be sure that number one, your video is off, your mic is working, and we can hear and we can see.
Okay.
Yeah. I also want to believe that if Adenike, please can you smile?
Yes,
Can
I
I
can
do
hear.
what?
Can you smile? What's wrong with Adenike? Are you okay?
Can I smile?
Can you give me a smile?
I'm here, don't worry. I'm fine. You can see me. I think my audio works. It's okay. Doing well. Good morning,
I need
everyone.
to see you smile. Thank you. So basically, I'll just do the intro. I'll introduce the keynote speaker. Then I'll go ahead and introduce all the panelists. Then we'll start the panel session. So I was asking Maureen that which do you think is the best way to take the questions? Do we allow the audience to ask their questions, raise up their hands and ask the questions, or to just leave it in the chat room? We'll need Maureen to coordinate that because we are expecting over 100 participants on this conference. Maureen, please, who will help us handle the questions.
Okay. So how am I expected to do that? Just read out the questions or call on who, just search through for whoever is raising their hands and
yes, okay. I will do that in conjunction with you, but I'm just saying that at times I might have I might have more than one thing more than one thing going on at the same time. So I need you to help coordinate. Maybe just ensure that we don't.
Yeah, I'll be available to help.
Okay, in all of the comments and all of the observations. So some might be just observation, some might be recommendation, but we need to.
Your volume is really low.
Oh, hello. Okay.
Yes. Okay. It's better now.
Okay. Okay. I think we have some people waiting on the.
I'll let them in. Yeah.
Okay. So each of the panelists will have 15 minutes each to answer all the questions. I will keep track of the time.
Okay.
But the program itself is between 11:30 to 1:30. Maureen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Thank you for the.
Good morning, Maureen. I don't think you heard before when I said hello. I think you are still trying to join in at the time.
Hi.
Hi. Good morning, Adenike.
Good morning.
You ladies look beautiful. I think we have Razak. Yeah.
Okay, Razak has joined us.
Yeah, Razak has joined.
Okay, so I will call on the panelists from time to time. So if I read out the question, I will call out the panelists that I want to answer the question so that we don't confuse it.
Oh.
I have about 16 questions here. So it will be an average of 4 questions per panelist. But we'll do like a random selection. Can we mute everybody? Maureen, sorry, Winifred, please, can we mute everybody?
So we can try, but I think the way it's set up, there are some systems that just kind of override, and yeah, we're just I'll try my best, like at every point when I see someone off to yeah, I'll try to meet everyone.
I think that's the best. I thought we could allow the audience to introduce themselves.
I actually clicked the setting to mute everybody on upon entry, but I don't think it's worked so far. I'm just gonna be muting people.
Okay, so I think we have audience. That's very good. Trying to log in. You can hear me, Razak. How are you?
I am fine. Can you hear me too?
Yes, I can hear you. Nice to have you.
Hello, everyone. This is Chisaba. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chisaba.
Nice to have you here.
Good morning.
My pleasure.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Razak.
Good morning.
Hope you had a great day. You're having a great day.
Busy day, busy day.
Please
thank you.
As much as we are physically present, let us also be mentally present. Let us be psychologically present. We don't just want to see you, we want to feel you. So try to limit the distraction so that we can get a hang of what we are discussing. Especially the panelists. I understand that most of us are at work and there are a lot of things calling for attention. But let us try as much as possible to limit all of this. Thank you very much. But did Maureen log out? I think she's trying to come in again.
Maureen, if you're saying something, you're muted. Or maybe she's not speaking to us.
Okay, so I can see Mercy's login. Welcome on board. I can see Eddie. Welcome on board. It's good to have you. Okay, we'll allow just 10 minutes for people to log in. As soon as we have about 50 people, we'll start. Maureen, is that okay?
Yeah.
Oh, Winifred, is that okay? guess Maureen would be my best friend today. I seem to like that name.
Winnie, shall I pin you as well to the screen?
What?
Oh no, I was asking Winnie, do you want me to pin you, Winnie, to the screen? Or no?
No.
No. Okay.
Yes.
Quickly.
Top of the day to you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We're happy to have every single one of you. We're trying to get at least 50 people on board before we speak. Please bear with us. Can we mute Mike? The distraction is a lot. Welcome on board, Sheyi. I think I know Sheyi. Yes, welcome on board, Sheyi. Latif, good morning. Welcome on board. I think I can see Sandra. I can see Toby. I see you. Welcome on board. I can see Samuel. Welcome on board. We'll start at 11:45. We'll start at 11:45. Whether or not we have up to 50 people, we'll start at exactly 11:45. Yes, good morning, Toby. It's good to have you. Okay, so for those of us that are already logged in, when you hear inclusive diversity and equality in the place of work, what comes to mind? I'm sure that most of us are. Yes, I'll take that again. I say, so for those of us that are already logged in, when you hear diversity, equality, and inclusion in a place of work, what comes to mind? I'm sure that most of us are either business owners, HR professionals, and we're looking to learning a lot on this conference. But what comes to mind? Oh, hey, you can't hear me? You can't hear me.
Very clear.
Okay,
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. Okay, so can we all hear me now?
I'm in the meeting already. Yeah, but it's,
Right, please give me that feedback.
it's not a short meeting.
I
Yeah, we
hear
can
you.
hear you, but I think it might be better if you do it like without the earphones.
Yes, please.
So
Yes.
I've actually removed the headphone.
Yeah, so we can hear you better now.
Okay, so I said when we hear inclusion, equality, and diversity in the place of work, what comes to mind? I'm sure that most of us are business owners or HR professionals, and we're looking at learning one or two things from this conference this morning. But I'm sure we also have expectations. So you might want to drop something in the chat. So in terms of your expectation, what are you expecting to learn from this conference this morning? What do you expect to be your takeaway? What do you expect to take away from this conference? And when you hear diversity, equality, and inclusion, what comes to mind? Like I said, we'll start at exactly 11:45, but this is me trying to interact with those of us that are already on board so that we don't feel neglected. Okay, so okay. Okay, so it's 11:42. Just 3 more minutes and we'll kick off. Welcome on board, Kate. I want to believe that we all have expectations from this conference. I'll be glad if you can share with me some of those expectations. Okay. Let me see. Okay, it's 11:43. We have barely 2 minutes. Then we'll kick.
Okay, I think in the absence of anyone else speaking, seeing how we have set up the event, maybe I can share what our expectation for this event is. So when we're thinking about this event, what we wanted as an outcome was to have like better policies for the workplace for people with medical conditions. We believe that people with medical conditions can still be accommodated in the workplace. And we think that sometimes it's just about, having this discussion and, helping HR professionals, for example, to be aware of the plight that people face and to realize that people with medical conditions are not limited or do not necessarily need to be limited by their conditions. They can actually be, there's a way, and it works in other places. There's a way to still be able to tap into the the expertise of the people, regardless of their situation. There's a way to provide better environments that will promote and enable them to thrive, regardless of their situation. So I think it's a win-win if we do things properly. But it's just, this event should hopefully help us navigate how we can get to the position where we can do things properly, and get the best policies that will benefit both the employees with medical conditions and the employers who want to get the best out of their employees.
You are very selfish. Thank you very much, Catherine. Please, can you do me a favor? Can we mute all the mics? The feedback is distracting. Thank you very much. So it's exactly 11:45. We're going to start right away. Top of the day to you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Testing, testing. I'll take that again. Top of the day to you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I think that is much better. It's a pleasure to have every single one of you log on to this virtual conference this morning. My name is Viroke Gumade. I'm a human resource professional with over 12 years experience in the field of HR. And I've worked in 4 major sectors of the economy, namely banking, manufacturing, consulting, and with the government. Yes, I've worked with Lagos State government. Once again, I say thank you for joining us on this virtual conference. We understand that there are 1,000,001 things contending for our attention online on a daily basis. But for you to have chosen to be on this virtual conference this morning means a lot to us, and we sincerely appreciate you for your time. This conference has been put together by the Tonymay Foundation, and it's titled Inclusion, Equality, and Diversity in the Workplace. A diverse and inclusive workplace is not only one that has employees from different backgrounds, ethnicity, race, gender, but also ones that provides these employees with resources and tools to make them perform at the optimal level. This morning on this platform, I have with me a group of highly intelligent and experienced professionals who are going to do justice to the topic of the day. But before I introduce the keynote speaker, I'll run you through the agenda of the day. So I will appreciate, Winifred, if you can display the agenda at this point. I'll take some housekeeping rules. I wanted to say I'll allow the audience to introduce themselves. Yes, I think we don't have up to 50 people, so we can still take a few introductions from the audience. And maybe at this point, 1 or 2 people can tell me what their expectations are, because I want to believe that we've all logged on this morning, believing that we will learn something. So I want to hear what your expectation is. It will help us measure whether or not we've been able to deliver on the mandate of this conference. I will introduce our keynote speaker, and I will handle the virtual microphone to her to do justice to the topic. I'm sure we're all aware that this conference is predominantly a panel discussion session, meaning that we have ample time to ask major problems bordering on inclusion, equality, and diversity in the workplace. So let us go straight to the business of the day. In case you're wondering, in case you've not seen the agenda, we have just 5 items on the agenda. So the number 1 thing is admitting guests into the virtual conference between 11:30 to 11:45. And we're kicking off at exactly 11:45. At 11:45, we'll have between 11:45 and 12, we'll introduce the keynote speaker and the panelists. Then at exactly 12 o'clock, the keynote speaker comes on board to do our thing. That will last for 30 minutes. Then after that, we'll have the question and answer session. That's the main That's the main thing, where you can ask all the questions. Then we will close with the closing remark. I'm sure you can see that, there are not a lot of things on the agenda, so we will not keep you beyond the stipulated time. Yes. Okay, so I'll take some housekeeping rules. So I will say that as soon as you log on, please ensure that you mute your mic. It can be very distracting when we have background noise. If you have questions, observations, recommendations, please use the chat room. Yes, if you have questions and you want to be given audience, you can signify by raising your hands. We will take your question. Okay, so now I will introduce the keynote speaker. Can we have the profile display? I'll just read it out from here. Adenike Oyetunde, on-air personality, a qualified alternative dispute resolutor, a qualified human resource professional, and an emotional intelligence coach. She was a speaker at TEDx Bagada, Lagos in 2017. Her passion, driving conversations around the plight of disability in Nigeria, led her to establishing the Amputee United Initiative, a social group specifically for amputees. Recently appointed as a senior special assistant to the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, on persons living with disability. It's a pleasure to have Adenike as a keynote speaker this morning. So I've done a bit of tweak to the program. So I will introduce I've introduced the keynote speaker. She will speak. Then I'll go ahead and introduce the panelists, just for the sake of those that are going to join late. So officially, I'm handing over the virtual mic to our keynote speaker. Madam, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, every single person, all 28 of us here this Thursday morning, the 17th of February 2022. I hope you had a good Valentine's Day. I'd like to thank the entire team that put this together. And one thing that has resonated with me about the Tonymay Foundation is resilience. Quite a few back and forth due to no fault of anyone's, but here we are today to talk about a conversation. I believe that would expand our perspective about inclusion, equality, and diversity as it is. So I'm sure that in a few minutes, I'll be starting or giving my keynote speech. We're just here to learn. We're here to rub minds. We're here to speak to each other. We're here to hear from experiences. I remember that one of the outcomes that, I can't remember her name, the lady had mentioned was, she mentioned policy. And I noticed she kept saying medical condition. And I just kept smiling, to myself. Why? Because semantics. So that is another thing we're going to talk about here today. What do persons living with disability, want to be called or referred to as? Different things. We've moved from disabled to persons living with disability to differently abled. And now this morning I hear medical condition. Very fascinating if you ask me. So I'm sure it's going to be a good time here, and let the show begin. So thank you very much. Mr. Bironke, I've handed it back to you. I said thank you very much. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm a bit confused. So I was expecting a keynote speech from you.
No, you said 12. You said 12 noon. You said that you introduced the speaker. She would speak a bit, then you introduce the panelists. So, and then you mentioned 12 noon. So I'm working with what it is that you said. But it's fine. If you need me to go ahead now, it's perfectly fine.
So let me tell you what I want to do. I want you to speak. Then after that, I will introduce the panelists. So just for the sake of those that are going to join late, so that they can still catch at least a bit of the profile of the panelists. Yes, so you can go ahead. Thank you very much.
Oh, great. You're most welcome. Okay, so we're here to talk about inclusion, diversity, and equality. And when you see words like this all coined together, one thing that strikes my mind almost all the time is the fact that there's so many things that happen in the West that we want to bring here, but for lack of better description, for lack of adaptability, we just pick it and then bring it here. And I'd explain to you, holistically, when you look at the topic of this nature, you realize that it applies very easily in countries where they have things like diverse beliefs and religious beliefs, sexual orientation, and even gender. So you have, at the moment, they're about LGBTQI, they're about 9. They have about 9 categories in the West. But here, we're in Nigeria, we're based in Nigeria, it is anti-law, it is this and that. We have only 2 genders, female and male. So quite often when you talk about, or you want to consider inclusion, diversity, and equality, especially in this context of my portfolio, you realize that the conversation usually expands and extends solely to usually persons living with disabilities and as well as women in the workplace. But I'll try to pick the words one after the other. Inclusion means something is going on. There is a participation, there is an arrangement. So you want to infuse a category of people or thoughts or opinions. That is simply put what inclusion means. Diversity connotes, a variety of options, a variety of thought ideas, a variety of belief systems. And then equality means that having gone through including and then having diverse, you're trying to create a level playing field where every single person will be treated equitably. And when you add all of it together in the workplace, you realize that it is possible, it is needed in the workplace of 2022. It is more than necessary for not just the employer, but for the general society to, one, come to terms with the reality that indeed we have a diverse variety of persons who work in the workplace. If you want to use generation, for instance, and you divide it from the baby boomers to the Gen Z guys, to the millennials, you will agree with me that, especially because quite a number of people here are in the human resource area, you'll realize that you'd agree with me that it has taken a lot of learning, unlearning, and relearning to knowing how to adapt across the generations that currently exist at the workplace. Quite a number of baby boomers are still very active in the workplace, in private structures as well as government institutions for several reasons. Say, consultants. If you go to work into a general hospital, for instance, you'll most likely find a consultant in his 60s or slightly over 60. Some of them have attained retirement and have come in various capacities. And in that same work environment, you will find people in their 20s, take, for instance, students or people who went to private universities here in Nigeria and have to do their housemanship in the same hospital, for instance. It becomes almost impossible to work in an environment of that nature without inculcating, one, the reality that you have a diverse variety of generations that currently exist. Secondly, and that for seamlessness to occur in that work environment, not only will the HR make policies available, but every single employee that works in a place of that nature must of the necessity understand, accept, and admit that when you're relating to people in one generation, your wordings might change, the connotations might change, your tone might change, and that makes for seamlessness in the workplace. And if we take it into, and I use generation as an instance, if we take it into belief system. Here in Nigeria, we claim that we have 2 basic religious beliefs, Islam and Christianity. But people, when you interact with people, you realize that there are many people who are agnostic, there are many people who are atheist, And because people, religious beliefs has not become a key factor into employing people in a lot of institutions, except in certain arrangements. Say, for instance, you work in a church environment or you work in a mosque environment where your religious beliefs might be a criterion for your employment. Ideally, it is not a criterion, or it doesn't, include the criteria that they, adopt when employing you. In that instance, your religious beliefs do not really play a major role in the recruitment process. But when you have, time to time interactions with your employees, your co-workers, people differ on points here and there. In this part of the world as well, race, the majority of us are Africans, majority of us are in Nigeria, but that doesn't take away from the fact that we have people of mixed race in Nigeria who work in the workplace, or people of mixed identities, as it were. So if you do not know how to, there's an HR person who is joining us from maybe somewhere, maybe New York City, for instance, it's diverse for them. It's something that they're exposed to, because you have people from several parts of the world, African Americans, you have Asians, you have, so many people. You have people who have, they're mixed, and in that climb, it becomes beyond necessary for not only the employers, but equally the employees to understand how to adhere to the policies that the employer has set in place, navigating through interracial interactions or issues. Now, we've talked about generation, we've talked about gender, we've talked about religious belief systems, and we have to talk about age. And I'm touching on all of these because quite often here again, and I'm emphasizing here because I'm based in Lagos, I'm based in Nigeria, the ones that apply to us are things of age, sometimes ethnicity, as some people might even frown at that thought. But if you go to certain institutions, whether government-owned or private-run, you find out that some of them are predominantly occupied by persons from a particular ethnic society or ethnic group in this country. And we say that we're one, but here, for instance, the subject matter of state of origin becomes a problem. Marriage, for instance, for people who get married and you want to fill a form and people ask you, what state are you from? And you are confused. Should I write my state of origin I've always used, or do I then include the state of origin of the person I'm married to? State of origin, as well as place of residency, has continued to be subject matter of discourse, however low-key in Nigeria, but is very necessary because we're talking about employment. I think somebody is unmuted. Please mute yourself. Olumide
Esther, could you mute yourself, please?
My sister.
I'm not sure she's.
I can't seem to
mute her from my end. We'll wait for her, hopefully.
Can you mute her, toss her out?
Please kindly mute her now. You can mute her.
Okay, great. And then that's what happens when distractions happen, line of thoughts lost. Okay, so in places where ethnicity should not ideally matter here in Nigeria for employers and employees, you find out that, especially in individual run institutions, people say they would rather work with certain people from certain ethnicity for various factors. Oh, I've known them the longest. Oh, we're trying to build a family legacy. Oh, they have several factors. But the reality about it is, if I, who was born in the southwest of Nigeria and is from southwest of Nigeria and incidentally is married to a person from the southwest of Nigeria, finds myself in a place like that, I must, of necessity, regardless of the fact that I am an employee in that unit, find how to create somewhat balance in interacting, as it were. So I've talked about ethnicity, I've talked about age, I've talked about belief system, I've talked about gender. Again, here in Nigeria, we have only two key genders, female and male. And in that instance, those are the ways that employers create policies and create environments. You have the female restroom, you have the male restroom. And I believe very strongly that that's actually the key differentiating factor, especially when it comes to relating on gender basis. And because I'm female, I'm going to also talk about pregnancy and maternity, which has in the last year, particularly throughout this pandemic era, especially if you follow conversations from the United States, for instance, you would see that maternity leave has become a key argument between the thought processes in the United States politics. And for us to bring that back here to Nigeria, employers have to create and understand that, one, the fact that I'm female doesn't in any way exempt me from attaining so many things. But you realize that realities, is not the same. My friend 2 weeks ago or last week had her naming ceremony and we went. And I remember that her husband was on a work call. And in her living room, I remember telling another friend of ours, saying that this is why conversations of paternity leave across the world is gaining traction. When will it come to Nigeria? Even if it is in Nigeria, what the measure of enforcement will be a discussion that I believe very strongly that
bring about gender diversity in inclusion.
Say that again.
The Northerners are being in power, they are in position, they are reference.
Sorry, can we not interrupt the speaker? We will come to questions and comments much later on, but it's distracting. So if you can just keep your comments, we will take them later. We promise we will get to your comments. Or you can just post it in the chat box and we will take them.
I think the chat works. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So, okay, thank you very much. So with inclusion, again, what it means is there's an existing structure. And I'm breaking it down this simplistically because sometimes having to put ourselves in the conversation can help with understanding. So there's an existing structure, there's an existing space, there's an existing work environment. You are trying to do what? Bring in contribution and perspectives. With equality, you are saying that irrespective of my age, irrespective of my my geographical ethnicity, I beg your pardon, in this part of the world, irrespective of my gender, irrespective of even my race here in Nigeria, I am entitled to an equal playing field at the place of work. And for diversity, it connotes, the makeup of the people that, make this existing structure function, the various makeups, categories, women, persons living with disability, the elderly, because in some sectors, there are people who above the age of 60 are still not regarded as invalid to working in a work environment. Somebody might ask that, why is it necessary for us to have conversations about inclusion, about equality and diversity? I'll explain to you why. I painted the picture of two generations of individuals working in a hospital environment, a person above 60 and a person in his 20s. Imagine that both of them understand categorically that their perspectives are considered, their thoughts are considered, they are considered when policy making is necessary, their experiences are also considered. Guess what it does? It causes retention. You find out that a lot of people, Ogunodi Olariwaju, is it possible for you to please mute?
Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. You realize that it increases retention where the 20-year-old, where the under 20-year-old who is even doing a holiday job does not want to leave that work environment. It reduces strifing. It reduces strifing and increases cordiality, something that a lot of people who might want to admit and accept as me, we see a lot in the workspace. Usually, for instance, NYSC, when the youth corpers come around, you see that quite a number of employees are struggling where to find the rhythm, where to put in the youth corpers. Why? They have a different generation, they have a different wavelength, and they're just being tossed into the work environment for a lot of them. So if we create and find places where work environments or workplaces encourage equality, diversity, and inclusion, those categories of persons will come, and then cordiality and striving will be reduced. And there's also a sense of belonging. If you check institutions that have lived for a number of years, you find out that the sense of belonging that gives to their employees makes it a legacy business for a lot of them. After a while, some of these employees have stakes in these businesses or in these workplaces, dependent on the industry or the sector that they operate in. I talked about retention of staff. When we promote an environment, a workspace that has all of this, it translates to a high level of creativity and innovation. And I've seen it play out my friend works at Google, in Lagos. And I always love to stop over, passing around, a day off. I always love to go there. Why? Because the work environment, they create such an atmosphere for even an outsider to understand that not only is every employee's interest taken into account, but also because you know that your interest is taken into account, it spurs you into giving your best optimally. Efficiency, effectiveness, creativity, innovation at its peak. Why? Because you are very certain that they are creating a level playing field for you, regardless of where you're coming from, regardless of what you believe systems that you have, regardless of the medical conditions that you may have. And it also includes maternity. In environments like that, they take maternity very, very, very importantly. Maternity and pregnancy is a conversation about equality that we must expand on. Why? You see would-be employers refuse vehemently to take women of marriage age or women who are pregnant or just newly married because of fear of lost work hours. They are scared. What if she goes on maternity leave? When she goes, what does the company get to lose? When she gets pregnant and she gives birth to this child, when will she be pregnant again? And we see it over and over and over again. Thankfully, the pandemic era has shown a lot of employers across the world now that regardless of the fact that she may need time to be off work, she would finally have time to ease gradually back into the work system. So taking points, she has in Canada, for instance, it's a 1 year's break. You have a 1 year break. And then at the expiration of, I think that 1 year, a few months, you still get, not expiration, you get your full pay. In the UK, I think it's about 6 months, and you get your full pay for 6 months. And after that, it starts to reduce until you are certain that you are able to return back to the work environment. Here, by law, you're entitled to 3 months, with pay. If you want to convert your 4th month, maybe you probably have a 1 month yearly vacation you haven't gone for, you want to convert, it's often non-paid. And these are the conversations that we must talk about, especially when we're looking at equality and pregnancy and maternity. The organization becomes a most sought after place amongst the working populace. They want to come there. If you look at the tech guys now, I remember reading a tweet recently and someone asking, how easy is it to poach somebody he mentioned one of the tech guys in Lagos here, and someone replied by saying it's impossible. And it really caught my attention. I'm like, wow, so you mean that I would live at a time where it is not impossible for someone to want to poach an employee in a space, in a work environment in Lagos, Nigeria? It was very commendable to me. And then I asked a friend who worked there. The system, the policies that they have in place, unbelievable, unbelievably amazing. And that's because, one, the tech world knows that they are competing, and they have also moved into the shared talent era where a lot of Nigerian employers are still struggling. You want to retain 100% right of your staff. But guess what the world is doing and where the world is going now? Some staff are working with 2 or 3 different employers and are sharing talent with these places. So these are some of the advantages why, if we have inclusive places where you're sure that whatever it is that you are, wherever it is that you are, so long as you qualify for whatever positions that were advertised or you're already in that space, you will be included. And if you're included, it means that even if you have diverse opinion, diverse thoughts, or whatever it is, you'll be given an equally level playing field for you to work perfectly. What causes, what happens when we don't see all of these things? The opposite of these things happen. There'll be strifing every day. HR will be calling mediation meeting. HR will be trying to resolve fights. Before because we're in African settings, it will boil down to, do you think I'm your mate? And then the Gen Z now is wondering, I don't understand, how did our age get into the conversation? I simply was asking you about so and so. You didn't have to attack my age. Next thing you know, I'm going to tell the HR. Next thing, meeting. When all of these things are not done, it's striving, the lack of cordiality, the lack of productivity, there is distraction. The employees cannot even give minimally, they cannot give maximally, they're churning out at a minimal level. And you think that it's only the employees concerned in that particular matter. Guess what? Even the co-workers are also concerned. Why? Because when people of a certain age group stay in a place after a while, permutation will occur, osmosis will occur, and then people start to share the same brain thoughts and patterns. And then you see that there's now a faction in the office. There's people that want to support the man that angrily walk to the HR, and there's the one that want to support the Gen Z. Now that, yes, he just only asked a question. What does he mean by that? Why did he mention that the boy is 22-year-old? Question goes back to when it concerns the work. Did the question that the 22-year-old asked matter in this context? If it didn't matter, then you are bound to answer and then find a way around it. What should employers do in ensuring that they have, what can they do? What are the active steps that they can create? You must understand that it is insufficient to have policies. If you have policies and you have a diverse variety of people in your workplace and you don't include them in the policy making process, it is dead on arrival. What do I mean? If you want to create policies about maternity, for instance, and you do not ask women, the ones who get pregnant and the ones who carry. If you want to have policies on paternity and you do not ask the men who are also going to be fathers, then it means that you might actually miss quite a number of things that would affect these people in the event that they need to actually go on either their maternity or their paternity vacations. So it is necessary for employers that in policy making, you must involve the people who you are trying to get to. In space of disability, your workspace must be accessible. And I don't mean ramp, because when you talk about disability, people are very quick to say, oh, we have ramp. Come off it. Ramp only would apply to just a fraction of people living with disability. There are people that have intellectual disability. There are people who are visually impaired, people who are blind. There are people who are hard to hear. A person who is deaf or hard to hear does not need your ramp per se, because the person can see and the person can walk. So how does your ramp help a person like that? So accessibility must cut across quite a number of areas of disability, as the case is. So make sure as an employer, there's access. I know that is kind of difficult for a lot of employers because of structural changes. And what it means is that if your employer has been situated at a particular location for maybe 30 years, and then you just become the HR person, and then one day you just want to move and say, we don't have lifts in this place. So the interesting thing about it is that the facility owners, the facility building owners know that they are bound by law to provide after it has gone beyond the specific level. So a lot of employers are in the wrong. A lot of institutions are in the wrong. And so imagine if Lagos State government, for instance, has to lock everywhere. Many people will be out of their jobs for such a long time. So one of my greatest desires from a conversation of this nature is to whip and ignite some form of humanity in all of us as we go back to our primary places to say, look, we keep complaining, we keep talking, but truly charity begins at home. What is it that we're doing? As simple as special parking. So I drive myself. I have crutches. I'm an amputee, but I drive myself when I want to. There are quite a number of places that do not have special parking. People don't even know that for every 20 parking slots in Lagos State, you must have at least a minimum of 3. A minimum of 3, and under no condition is anybody allowed to park there without having a disability. So accessibility, especially when you look at people living with disability, is beyond necessary if truly employers are serious about creating inclusive, a diverse, and an equitable workspace. Like I mentioned, make sure that you include every category that your workforce captures from the start till the very end. From the very start till the very end. Carry every single person along. Remove biases, consciously or unconsciously, which is why if you have a good human resource department, people should be able to walk in to say, I feel very strongly that so and so policies are poised, biased against me, because if the person can articulate with evidence what they think that it is that they do, then the employers must of a necessity stop it. In Lagos State, for instance, one of her key objectives is to increase the number of persons living with disability in the civil service. But we all know that it's impossible for the Lagos State government to employ every single person who can gain an employment into her civil service. It is near impossible. It is outrageous to even expect it. So there's work ongoing to create an environment where private-owned businesses are going to be encouraged, giving incentives here and there, finding modalities about it to encourage the employment of persons living with disability. It reduces the workload on the shoulders of the government, and what it does is that it increases the number of persons living with disability who then get jobs. In that instance, what happens is more people who can are getting jobs and everybody's getting ease. Because when you have a person who is living with disability, who wants to get a job, is unable to secure a job, it affects the entire society, because in most cases, their family, friends, their loved ones, their carers are the ones that have to bear the burden and the brunt of providing for them in all areas, financially, medically, psychologically, and most times mentally. So I believe very strongly that inclusion also includes education. Education, and education not necessarily at the four walls of what we know school to be, but also it includes teaching your current staff. If you say you want to create an inclusive, a diverse, and an equitable environment, you must of a necessity educate your current staff, what it means, what should we do when we have a person like this in our midst, how do we treat them? Many people don't even know that people living with albinism in Lagos State, for instance, actually are persons living with disability, or people who are living with dwarfism. They're actually people living with disability. How do we relate with them at the place of work? What education do we put back? How much effort is it that we're putting back into our current, staff to educate them about how to relate? If you work in a place where the person living with albinism is in marketing, for instance, it is near impossible and it is outrageously inhumane to expect that a person living with albinism will be right under the sun during the highest time of the sun to now go out and start marketing. Let the person find a frequency. I'd rather start my day at 7 a.m. and then come back to the office at 10 o'clock when the sun is at its highest. When the sun starts to reduce, I'll go out. Just give me what it is I'm supposed to do. I promise you I'll deliver. Let me find a rhythm around it and I will give you what it is that you want. Many people don't consider, because what happens with those living with albinism is that under the sun, they are exposed to ultraviolet rays, and it increases the incidence of so many skin-related issues, one of which is skin cancer, which unfortunately affects a lot of them the most. And I choose these categories of disability to further explain why it is necessary for us to go beyond lip service about creating an inclusive space. In the banking sector in Nigeria, for instance, never have we seen it in 2020, 2021, where we had the highest number of females running these institutions, something that we never had seen before. But here we are, we're seeing it, we're living at such a time like this. And it also means that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We don't want tokenism. As a workplace, as an employer, do not be bamboozled, or as an employee, do not be bamboozled by tokenism. What do I mean? And I'm going to use disability as an instance. Some people pride themselves to say we are an inclusive environment. Oh, when you ask, what do you mean? We have this, we have that. Some persons have told me, the person at our reception is a blind person. And I was intrigued that, oh, wow, look, interesting. You meet some of those people and you see that they're working under the most dastardly of conditions. They are not taking care, but because the company wants to just this person to be the first point of interaction, you meet, oh, the person at their reception is, is blind, is visually impaired. You realize that an institution like that does not understand what it means to be inclusive, to create a diverse environment, and equally provide a situation where every single person in that area can work equitably to give their very best. Globally, there's an Equality Act, for instance, and it touches on several things. It touches on age, it touches on gender, it touches on race, it touches on belief system, which takes me back to where it is that I started from. If we do not identify the areas we're trying to include in our work environment as it currently exists, we may not create indeed an inclusive society, or rather an inclusive workspace. And if we cannot include an inclusive workspace, the tendencies that we are not open to diverse thoughts, opinions, or individuals is very high. And when all of that is evidenced, we clearly cannot create an equitable society, or in this instance, an equitable work environment for people to exist. So thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you very, very much, Adenike. Thank you very much for your time. My notes is actually full. I have jotted down a lot of things in the course of the speech. I'm going to go briefly over some of the things that you've mentioned, just to reiterate, especially for the benefit of those that are just joining us, or for the benefit of those that joined while you were talking. So the first thing that I picked was the fact that you said that what do people living with disability want to be called? So there are different terminologies, that people throw around, myself inclusive. We use different terminologies, but I think I got from your speech that they want to be referred to as people living with disability. Am I right?
Okay, so to be very honest with you, the conversation is still open. And even globally, you realize that on a per-person basis, I've come to accepting that people want to be called different things. So in the event that you're working in an environment that has people living with disabilities, you may want to ask them, how do you want to be called? I have a personal bias. I do not understand what it means to say medical condition. Medical condition connotes to me like I'm sick, like there's something wrong with me, like avoid this person. But the person who is using medical condition is most likely thinking, oh, let me help this person package it first. Yes. So it would always differ. And I've also realized that persons living with disability is almost the globally acceptable way. I also see that people who do not live with disabilities quite often are the ones that fight this fight. And, it always amuses me, like, calm down. This is not your reality. We understand empathy, but it is not your reality. But if you have the opportunity to, and I do it, if you have the opportunity to, on a per person basis, please feel free to ask people, how do you want to be referred to? Differently abled, special needs. There's a time disabled used to be used. And if you agree with me, how people used to use disabled, for instance, was always connotatively downcast. So people living with disabilities started to say, we are not disabled. So now, persons living with disability, in the event that you're unsure, is where to start from. If you remember when I was talking, I said visually impaired, I said blind. I have met many blind people who say, I am blind, call me blind. I have met some people that say, I am not blind, I am only visually impaired. Why? The people who want to be called blind have told me they do not like, They do not like to say an impairment. An impairment sometimes means there's something wrong. It is all semantics. Some people say differently abled. It is all semantics, to be honest. And this is my own personal bias. So persons with disabilities, persons living with disabilities have the widest reach. But if you must, please ask people whether or not how they want to be referred to. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so another thing another takeaway from me is the fact that you took out time to itemize all the benefits that is associated with having a workplace that is that has some of this practice in place. So you have you said high retention rate, and you made mention of the likes of Google. I'm sure a lot of us want to work in such environments. I saw a video online yesterday, drawing from one of the examples that you used. Most of these tech companies these days go the extra mile to entice their employees because they know that the competition is very stiff out there. So
yes.
I think is I will remember the name. So they did a demonstration, like a demo of their workplace. I saw it on Twitter yesterday, and walking you through the reception, the lunch area, their lounge, where you can rest when when you're tired.
They have all of that. They have all of that.
Yes, they have all of that. The tech company, so all of that, suggests to me that some organizations are waking up to the reality that we find in our environment, especially based on the fact that the pandemic has made us to realize that you can get people to work even without them coming to work. So
Absolutely.
there is the productivity is higher. So you have to give more. But for some organizations that are still struggling, I would say that the work, the majority of the work is on business owners, but majorly on HR professionals to make them understand. Because for a business owners, it's majorly about the bottom line. But if as HR practitioners, you can tie all of these things to productivity, how all of this will affect or impact on productivity, and how eventually all of this will increase the bottom line. They might not begin to see exactly a reason why we have to put all of these things, into place. Yes. So once again, I want to appreciate.
A part that I missed out, I don't know if you can hear me. A part that I missed out in the maternity and pregnancy part, or paternity, is even the part of creche. Do you know the measure of productivity that an employer will have if they have an in-house creche for all their staff that have children and they need to take to work? I have seen it take productivity to a high level that they never even thought possible. I have seen multinationals, but we also must realize that the economy is not easy for a lot of employers to start, but that is still not an excuse, to be honest. When I talked about structural changes, I admitted that many people will struggle because structurally they cannot equip the buildings that they are currently existing in with some of the facilities. But the ones who can and the ones who make plans too are the ones who actually have the best interests of their employees at heart. So seeing that a majority of us here are in the HR or inclusion or diversity space, the conversation must continue. The conversation must have tangible and cogent numbers. When you talked about increasing the bottom line, truthfully, even as an individually run business, if you're the HR and you have a 50 staff strength, how do you explain to the owner of the business that, look, we need to have a creche? Our employees, when we hired them, were right after NYSC. A majority of them have gotten married. Majority of them are having children now. We need to create an environment where they can come and will drop their children there. Do you know what it does to a woman's psyche? For a mother that is breastfeeding, she doesn't have to start rushing to wherever it is to pump. She can take her lunch break and go there and breastfeed the child. For a father, because people think it's only women, for a father whose wife cannot be with the child that day, he can actually take the child to work because his office has a creche. I just actually said it, Chizoba. I just saw Chizoba's comments, because the father can actually take the child to crash. So imagine how psychologically hyped the average person will be to say, what? You took your child to work? And the guy is wondering, yeah, it's my child. It's my child. So I'm just going to stop there so I don't keep talking and talking and talking.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I like the level of engagement. I'm sure that the audience too are enjoying this. One last thing that
I'm enjoying the comments, the chats. Yeah. I'm reading the chats at the same time.
Okay, so one last thing that I would like to mention is the fact that because I'm also an HR practitioner and I have experience. What we do majorly sometimes when we want to promote or to project or to sell these ideas to management is to try as much as possible to back it up with data. Data is our friend these days. If we can, I remember there was a time we were trying to convince management why a particular class, why a particular qualification is needed for a particular position. Because I've been in recruitment and we've recruited thousands of people have gone through entry-level recruitment, but we found out that maybe those that have a particular qualification stay longer on the job. So we in trying to convince management, we had to come up with facts why we think we should stick to a particular set of graduates to fill a particular role. So if we can, and I remember when we were trying to do maybe set up like a crate or have a crate, we have to be able to tie all of these things to how it will impact on the bottom line. Because like I said, that's the only language most business owners understand. So we must begin to make data our friend. So beyond just talking, we need to be able to back up how some of these things add up. So thank you very much. I will go straight into the panel discussion. I think we've exited. This is 12:37, and we're supposed to start at 12:30. But before I introduce the panelists, thank you very much, our keynote speaker. Before I introduce the panelists, I have a short story. So it's a personal recruitment story that I would like to share. I wrote it down so that I don't lose my line of thought. So I said that diversity, equality, and inclusion starts from recruitment. So as HR managers, as business owners, or as line managers, we must try as much as possible to focus on performance. The person I'm trying to recruit to this for this position, does he have the capacity to deliver on the job? And I'll buttress it with like I said, with the recruitment story that I have. So this happened during the pandemic. So we all know that one of the major pain points of business owners across the globe is the number of positions that remain unfilled annually and the impact this has on organizational bottom line. But I can also categorically say that the number one factor for this major challenge is that businesses cast their recruitment net so narrowly that it excludes an untapped talent pool. I've titled them the physically challenged. So, sorry. So I'll share with you an unconventional recruitment experience I had during the lockdown. I had the opportunity of hiring an online sales agent. I never had physical interaction with the guy, not even a video conference like what we're having right now. We chatted on WhatsApp a couple of times and I made my selection. It turned out to be a great online sales agent and has sold quite a number of properties since hiring him for my client. On a particular occasion, after hiring him, I tried to speak with him on the phone. It was only then that I realized that he was speech impaired. This seemingly disability did not and has not in any way
hindered him from performing optimally at his job. But if I had had the face-to-face interview, I most likely wouldn't have selected him. The pandemic is creating new opportunities for everybody globally. If we are living any kind of disability, now is the time for us to begin to project our skills. So as HR managers, we might think that we have inclusive, equality, and diversity policy in place. But have we ever done blind recruitment before? Have you decided to remove all the biases from a CV and try to recruit? Okay, so I'll leave that to you to answer. So right away, I will go ahead and introduce the panelists. Okay. Okay, so I'll start with Chizoba Mojekwe. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. She is the lead consultant, Deaf Acroyd Consulting Limited. Chizoba is a transformational leader in human resources, organizational and individual learning, change management, and operational management. She has extensive experience in various leadership positions across different countries and sectors. Her work experience spanned over 3 decades, yes, 30 years. She's worked in notable organizations such as Guinness, Accenture, MTN, ECOWAS, and most recently, CBN, where she held the position of Director, Human Resources, and Director, Capacity Development. She holds an MBA from the University of Benin and a BSc Biochemistry from the same institution. She's a member of CIPMN and SHRM, from where she obtained a certification as a global professional in human resources. She supports several voluntary initiatives and advocacy groups. Not only does she advocate for inclusive organizations, but not only does she advocate for inclusive organization and public services, but she also regularly helps women and people living with disability to find careers and vocational footing. She is known to inspire people to excellence and communicate effectively across generational and cultural divides. Okay, so that's the first panelist. The second panelist is Razak Adekoya. Razak is a disability and social inclusive advocate. He is currently lead implementation of the UK aid funded inclusion works project at Site Savers. Razak is the conveyor of the Nigerian Business Disability Network and appointed as the Speaker of the Nigeria People's Disability Parliament by the federal government in December 2019. He is the author of 4 books and has contributed to numerous national and regional policy, including the African Union Guideline on Youth Exchange and Education. Thank you. That's our second panelist. Our third panelist is, okay, so you're going to forgive me if I murder your name. Yukenebo Dari. She is the Managing Director, Edo State Skills Agency. That's Edo Job, otherwise known as Edo Jobs. She's the Managing Director of Edo State Skills Development Agency, where she oversees Edo Jobs Initiative, Edo Innovates, Edo Creative Hub, Edo Food and Agri Cluster, and Edo Production. All these initiatives have jointly impacted over 180,000 beneficiaries in Edo State over the last 4 years. She has also overseen the startup and running of several notable projects in and out of Edo State.
Her passion for job creation and human development in Nigeria has seen her receive several awards and recognition, such as Mandela Washington Fellowship in 2017, Ford Foundation Prize for Youth Empowerment in 2015, and JCI 10 Outstanding Young People Award for 2017. Most recently, she was also selected as one of the recipients of the Most Influential People of African Descent Under 40 Award for 2019. Then lastly, we have Maureen Nwachi. She is the head of operations and human resource manager at Sickle Cell Advocacy and Management Initiative. She is a certified emotional intelligence and anger management professional. She's a writer, generic counselor, sickle cell advocate, socialpreneur, and she is equipped to handle mental health and drug addiction. She is also on her way to becoming a grief counselor. Her greatest passion is seeing that people living with sickle cell lead healthy lives as they find a healthy perception of themselves. She is dedicated, knowledgeable, and committed to contributing to creating solutions to global challenges. Thank you very much. So we have all our panelists. We'll go straight to some of the questions that we already have that has been sent in through the survey link. We can begin to post our questions in the chat room, or we can raise our hands if we want to be given audience to speak. Okay, so the first question I would like to direct to Razak. Can we unmute him, please? Can we unmute?
He's unmuted.
Okay, thank you very much, Winifred. Okay, so the first question is, what is inclusion, equality, and diversity in the, well, I think the keynote speaker has answered that question. So we'll just go straight to the next question. I think by now we all know what inclusion, equality, and diversity in the place of work means. So we go right into the second question, which says, what do we need, why do we need workplace inclusion? Okay, so yes, Razak can answer that. Why do we need, why is it important for us to have policies on, or why do we need a workplace that we have equality, diversity, and inclusion?
All right, thank you very much, the moderator, for that question, and a welcome good evening to everybody on the call. I think I will just respond to that using the Accenture report of 2018. And that report actually ran a survey across hundreds of companies. If my memory could serve me well, I think they actually ran that survey across 180 companies across Africa and few countries in South America and North America, as well as Asia, trying to understand what makes companies that are inclusive different from those that are not inclusive. And I think that survey is something I will jot the link later in the chat box. It's really helpful. The first thing that clearly is that companies that are more inclusive actually have a higher profit margin in terms of return than those who are not. According to the statistics of that report, it shows about 28% of higher profit margin. The second thing, which beyond profit, that if you then ask yourself what contributes to that profit, let's use the Niger Delta as a very good way to explain this. Naturally, if I have a company in the Niger Delta and 90% of my staff are actually diverse of different groups, including people in that community, there are likelihood that companies become more protected, more inclusive, and I'll be able to feel much confident. Let me now give it an example. You've talked about persons with disability. The last data we have so far, using their logarithm of 100 million adult consumers, it states clearly that 1 out of every 5 women will have one form of disability in their lifetime. It clearly shows that about 3 million of every 100 million adult consumers in Nigeria are visually impaired. It clearly even comes up with the data saying about 10 million of the 100 million adult consumers in Nigeria have physical disability. Having diverse group of people working with you definitely means they think through about the kind of product, considering that they themselves will be part of the users of such products. And as a result of them being part of the users of such products, they think about ensuring those products are accessible, they are inclusive for different stakeholders to use. So it's a good business for all. Inclusion, be it gender inclusion, it's a good business for all, for every business owners, in terms of productivity, in terms of retention, in terms of profits. I think I've been able to answer that from different angles. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Reza. Thank you for doing justice to the question. You said we're going to share the link to the survey with us. We will appreciate if you do that, because that is actually a very good selling point for any HR manager that is trying to sell any practice to business owner. That's a good place to start from. Okay, so can you please unmute Maureen? Yeah. Okay, so now people want to know, in terms of practical policies, do you have examples of inclusive organizations? I know that the keynote speaker mentioned Google, or do you have inclusive practices in your place of work? Do you have example of inclusive practices in your place of work that you might want to share with the audience this morning?
Okay, so in my talking about my place of work, first of all, I wouldn't want to be biased about it, because it's already a place where people with disabilities, where we offer solutions for people with disabilities, right? Particularly people living with sickle cell. And sickle cell can come about with a lot of physical disabilities as well. So in my place of work, yes, we have tried our very best to see how to include this kind of, bring about this kind of diversity into our work style. So yes, for my place of work. Previous places of work, yes, I can speak for a few places where I have seen such too, but most times we often see places like this or things like this practiced in multinationals. You rarely see them in local organizations run by our fellow Nigerians or Africans. So when you talk about places like MultiChoice, Airtel, and the likes, you can find such inclusion in places like this. So yes, and I think someone mentioned in the chat box that in her place of work, they are practicing, they practice this having a crèche at her place of work. And I think that's a very good start, which should be modeled across other sectors as well, maybe as time goes on. So I think that answers our question here, moderator.
Okay, thank you very much, Maureen. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll go straight to Chizoba. Please, can you unmute her? Okay, this is regarding recruitment. I've been in recruitment for years, so I know the different ways in which potential employees can be excluded in the place of work. I know that it starts from recruitment. So, Madam, can you mention to us some of the ways you think that candidates, potential employees, are being excluded right from the recruitment process?
some of the ways in which you think they are excluded from the workplace. I don't know if you got.
Yes, but I'm not going to answer that. And the reason why I'm not going to answer, yes, the reason why I'm not going to answer that is that recruitment is at the end of the discrimination that goes on in organizations. And so you need to, yes, so we need to, talk about a lot of these issues. So a lot of organizations do not understand diversity, and I'm so glad that, can you hear me now? Because I think I'm yeah. So a lot of organizations do not understand diversity, and because they do not understand diversity, they think it's all about women. They think it's about, people living with a physical disability. They think it's about, putting in a creche, for the organization. It's far more than that. A lot more than that. Diversity is a mindset, and it's a mindset that recognizes that, we are all unique. We are all different. Okay, so there are some that are very obvious. There are some that are not very obvious. So let me give you an example. All our doors are right-handed doors. Doors in organizations are right-handed doors. What of left-handed people? Are we saying that they are not, they are not also people in organizations? Okay. And we have people, we talk about maternity leave, but where are the single fathers? We never consider the single fathers. So should a single father get a maternity leave, or should he not get a maternity leave? Okay, so there are men who do school run, how, are we treating those men who do school run different from the women who are doing school run? People who want assisted fertilization in organizations, how are we assisting them in achieving that dream of being a mother? So there are many ways. We've got introverts and extroverts, and all our organizations are all extroverted organizations. We do training. We want people to respond immediately because, we don't realize that some people have to go process that. But there are many ways that we are doing. And if we recognize that difference, and recognize that this difference exists in the customers that we have. So as HR, I don't even go killing myself with what other organizations are doing. I start the conversation is, let's map our customers. Let's map our customers. If their money is good enough for us, then we need to find ways of serving them. And if we have to find ways of serving them, we've got to have people in the organization who are like them, for them to realize that, we really do care. So it's far more than, just, slicing and dicing some of this stuff, to recognizing what is the difference. And if we can bring the whole person to work, if we can engage the individual, committed individuals deliver far better results than, just any individual. And so sitting in central bank, it was one of the things. So I'm going to talk about some of the practices that we did. So sitting in Central Bank of Nigeria, we started with gender. So I had gender targets. We only had about 24% of the people in the bank were women. So the question was, where were the women? Why were we not recruiting the women? Guess what happens? The chairman of the recruitment panel is male. They are mostly males sitting in different locations. So the women in the panel are the ones who are in the secretariat, they do not have a voice. And so in interrogating, talking to people who had joined the organization, we found out that people were aggressive at the interview stage. We needed, a much more inclusive panel, so that if you walk into the panel, it reflects the kinds of people that we have in the organization, and also the people that we serve as a central bank. So we made the women chairmen, because we found it made it easy to put the people at ease, and then to encourage them to speak. Another thing we also found out was, where we advertise, when we do the recruitment test, and how we were doing the recruitment test. Now, because we're a public service organization, when we advertise, almost about 500,000 people will, and then people will start, this one is a small girl, the next thing she will deliver, the next thing, so that mindset had to be changed. Even during our promotions, we had to deal with that. The second one was people living with disability. Okay, so we have this nice office, the Office of the Future at the Central Bank of Nigeria. Yet we don't have automatic doors. We didn't have access. So even people who had business with us who were living with disability could not be accommodated. So we needed to provide accessibility. And so for us to do that, I cannot sit down with, the individuals who are not living with disability to go and be asking them what they require. So we recruited people living with disability. We went out to go find 15 people living with physical disability. You know, they have limited mobility, and we brought them into the organization and we had conversations with them about accessibility. At our learning centers, we had them remodeled our learning centers, so they had to go abroad. And for me, to send them abroad for training meant exposure for them to also then now come back. Then we recruited our first visually challenged employee, Bumi. She has a master's in software engineering from Imperial College. And we sat down with her. It took us 6 months to be able to assimilate Bumi into the organization, training people, putting in the systems that she required, you know, for her to be able to function, and training people to be able to work with her, you know. So there are many things that organizations, you know, can do. There are little bits, but it starts with one, understanding diversity. If we understand diversity, then it enables us to go look for, you know, so if we're going to do recruitment for like a physically challenged, where are we going to do it? Are we going to do it on the 6th floor of a building, or are we going to do it in a place that is accessible to them? And then when we're having conversations with them, do not walk away from the fact that they are physically challenged. Have the conversations, talk about coping mechanisms for them, you know, encourage them to engage with you in those conversations. But when you are taking a decision, you are taking a decision on, can he do the job? I am now living with arthritis. Okay, I'm living with arthritis now, and I've got limited mobility now. So I was not physically challenged, but I am, you know, getting to the point where I can't climb stairs. I can't, you know, there are things I can't do. There are chairs I can't sit on. And so in organizations, when you are talking to also the Generation X and the baby boomers who think, you know, oh, things have to, they will get to the point where they may, you know, have to use the wheelchair to be able to be mobile. So it's about the thinking. We are different. Then I need to understand that difference, and how can we enable you to do what you need to do to contribute to the organization, and then to make sure that your contribution, you know, is valued, your voice is valued, and we can, you know, if we need to discuss something concerning, you know, people living with any disability or living with any situation, you know, that they found themselves, how are we going to make sure that we give you a level playing field for you to be able to be the person that you should be? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the insightful response. So one thing is the fact that when you do it, when you put all of these things in place, all of these policies in place, who knows? Maybe tomorrow you will be the one to ultimately benefit from it. Wow, that is fantastic. So the moment we begin to see some of the things from this perspective, our whole paradigm will begin to shift. Because as HR managers, most of the time we find it difficult to sell across some of these things to business owners. But if you let them see that even them one day might need these things, because everybody is tuned to that frequency, what is in it for me? And the moment you begin to let them see what is in it for them, then maybe they begin to buy into it. Thank you very much. Yeah, Razak, please, can you unmute Razak? So when Madam was speaking, I felt a bit overwhelmed in the sense that because she's had a lot of multinational experience, you know, she's worked on different policies and all of that. But for somebody that is starting off in a small business, maybe a one-man business, how do you think, and the person wants to begin to take steps to begin to have an inclusive organization,
what are some of the baby steps that you think such an HR professional needs to take? I know on top of my head, Madam said gender. So if you begin with gender, what other things can we begin to put in place in a one-man business to make us realize that, you know, we are creating an inclusive workplace? Razak, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much. I think if I start with that of an HR professional, it's important we look at it. Myself, I'm visually impaired. And it's important we look at the processes in the HR. I'll focus around 5 of that: attraction, application, appointment, assessment, and retention. If you look at that seems to be the 5 areas in which the HR work evolves. Madam talks around attraction. How do you attract people? You realize a lot of time in the past, what you see is, oh, women are strongly encouraged to apply for this role. Gradually, it's becoming, we are an equal opportunity employer. Now we are seeing organizations making it more deliberate, putting it in job adverts. Persons with disability are also strongly encouraged to apply. There are a few more additions. I've dropped a link, and I think if you download that link, there are 2 kits in that link to guide you on the step-by-step checklist of what you can do around attraction. But there's also the point around the application itself, the platform you use for your recruitment. How do you ensure that the application process, do you even ask people what are the reasonable accommodation they will need if they are to go through the interview process? We've seen few companies putting that as part of the questions that is being asked when people are applying for job. Again, few more. And one of the things we try to discourage, particularly for people with disability, the issues around psychometric and artificial intelligence. We've come to realize that this has a lot of biases of a way of screening of people with disabilities during application process. Also, you have the point around assessment process and also appointment. A lot of time, reasonable accommodation is one of the biggest challenges people with disabilities. They find it difficult negotiating for that. And oftentimes, one of the things we've talked around is, most time when reasonable accommodation, when you don't think inclusively from the onset, and you want to bring it in between or afterthought, it becomes a bit more expensive. I know one of the conversations with the Lagos State government has been around what we call the access to work scheme, asking the Lagos State government to take away the financial burden, particularly for small businesses. We have that in the UK, for example, where if you are a small business, you want to hire, for example, someone who is visually impaired, and you need a screen reader. A screen reader, if not cracked, license, is around 500,000 naira now. And a small business will be thinking, how will I be able to purchase this? So one of the things we've put that advocacy to the state government is to say, can you take certain percentage of your disability trust fund, invest it in supporting reasonable accommodation for companies? Government, you can't employ every person with disability, for example. Doing that, you're taking that financial burden away from yourself. When such person is employed, he's being able to pay tax because he's economically empowered. Directly or indirectly, you have your social return on investment. I'm not using return on investment now, but social return on investment. So it's important that companies, and as we think through this in terms of policy-wise, we start pushing government to be able to put certain such structures to reduce the burden. We have that in the UK, and we've seen the significant impact of that in terms of how it reduces the financial burden from small business employers. And lastly, the retention. How do you continue to change? How do you continue to attract? How do you continue to support? If there's any company I'm going to use as a very strong example in terms of attraction, for example, which would be Unilever. I know we've worked with Unilever. I've worked with the likes of Unilever, MTN recently, providing the likes of what we call accessibility audits. What we did with that in our organization is to support them to review their policies, including the likes of Diageo and Guinness, Safaricom in Kenya, and a few other companies across Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, asking them to try and review the process, both physical platform, the policies, their program, and their processes. Those 4 P's seems to be what we try to focus on in terms of supporting such companies. And what we've seen is that some of them are changing. So I mentioned Unilever, for example. What they did is pretty simple. They put in a policy. If you are a staff, we really mean we want 5% of our workforce to be person with disability by 2025 globally. That's a public commitment. In doing that, they started auditing their workplace, their environment. Audit our workplace first to make it inclusive. Then they took it further. They put a policy. If you're a staff of Unilever, you see a job advert, and you're able to convince a person with disability to apply, and the person got the job, you are entitled to 100 euros. That's an attraction, trying to encourage staff for them to be able to know how they are serious about making 5% of their workforce to be people with disability. We've seen Diageo saying the procurement process, we want 3% of our entire supply chain to be people with disabilities, our entrepreneurs. We've started working with them, with farmers, for example, and they've started planning that, this year to next year, young entrepreneurs with disability will contain that percentage of their supply chain. I know Unilever rolled a survey out recently, asking all their suppliers as well to disclose if their businesses are owned at least 50% by a person with disability, or if they have, what percentage of their staff are persons with disability. So these are deliberate attempts. Companies, larger companies are using to support the smaller companies to start thinking around disability. Disability is everybody's business. Ability for us to understand that will really help in pushing the agenda forward. Thank you. Back to you, the moderator.
Thank you very much, Razak. Thank you. So we've not had any comment from one of the panelists. Yeah, it's deliberate. So I will throw the same question to UK Nebo, please, pardon me. Okay, how do you think that small businesses can begin to make their place of work inclusive so that, they begin to employ more either physically challenged or, just to make the workplace itself more inclusive so that they can begin to reap the benefit of having an inclusive workplace? Over to you. Please, can you unmute her? Hello, Winifred.
She's been asked to unmute.
Oh, okay. Is she there?
I think if we just move on, maybe she's having some issues.
So let's direct that question to Maureen. I'd like to hear from another perspective apart from Razak. How do you think that small businesses can begin to make their workplace more inclusive so that they can begin to benefit from having an inclusive workplace?
Okay, so I think at this point, I'll turn the tables. An inclusive society, right? That's what will breed inclusivity in every area, whether in workplaces, be small business, big business, whatever area. So how inclusive is our society at large? How inclusive is our politics? How inclusive, when you talk about social justice, how is it perceived in the society? And then we can now talk about big businesses, small businesses, and all that. So if I just wanted to turn the tables around. So when we talk about inclusivity, everyone has one way or the other mentioned why it's either possible or not possible, and how possible it can be. But it's when we talk about if let me not talk about the global perspective, from a global perspective this time around. When we talk about our country, how inclusive is one, our politics, how is social justice perceived, how right there, I don't know how, I've never worked in the government though, but when we talk about I think I've been to several government facilities. Number one, wheelchair accessibility for people with physical disabilities it's a challenge. When you talk about things like, I think Adenike mentioned something like parking space. I didn't even know anything like that existed in this in our policies until now. I didn't know something like that existed for parking space for people who are physically challenged or who have a disability. So how is this being enforced? Is it something that when I walk into a government-owned facility, I'm going to find it, functional? Is it part of the policies? Is it part of the processes? Is it, and so I'm not trying to, I don't even know how to say this. So when it comes to small businesses, I think Razak has mentioned best practices outside the country, but when we talk about trying to implement all that right here where we are right now,
in the Nigerian context,
I think it still has to do with something Mrs. Mojeko mentioned when it talks about people's perception about things, mindsets and things like that. So that's where we all begin from. If we cannot begin from that, if we're not able to change people's perception about things or the mindsets, it can be quite, it's going to be quite daunting. So for countries with these diverse workplaces, we can see things like disability-friendly environments. I mean, there's a space for people who are perhaps on their wheelchairs. There's no, they are not going to be afraid that buses or bikes or cars are going to be on the pedestrian, spaces. They can walk freely. They need to walk. If they need to ride their bikes, if they need to push on their wheelchairs, that already speaks enough for the society, on a larger scale. So when it comes to a work environment, it's easy to implement these things. So I ask again, how inclusive is the society we live in when it comes, from way up there to down here? I mean, that's the only thing that would help us in this aspect. I don't know if I have made any point at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, you've tried to do justice to it. But on top of my head, I'll run through some things that I think that we as, if you find yourself as an HR personnel in an SME environment, how you can begin to put some things in place that will make the workplace itself a bit more inclusive is that, number one, try and take a look at the positions that you're trying to fill. All the requirements that you have stated, and the ones that you've stated consciously and the ones that you've stated unconsciously, will they add to making the person perform better on the job? If not, there is no need including it. So if, for instance, you're hiring a graphic designer and the graphic designer doesn't, so sorry for the analogy that I'm going to use next, if the graphic designer doesn't necessarily need a leg and a arm to perform his job, then you can hire a physically challenged person. Well, maybe the person might need his hand to work on the computer, but he might not need the leg if he can even do the design from his house. So we need to begin to look at some of the positions that we're trying to fill, some of the positions that exist within those organizations. Because like I said, millions of positions remain unfilled annually globally. But the reason why some of these positions remain unfilled is because we are casting our recruitment net so narrowly that we are excluding some people that have everything required to perform the job. But because we are so biased in our thinking, because we are so biased in our action, we exclude them. If somebody sits in front of you and the person can't speak well, you automatically assume that that person cannot perform the job because the person cannot express himself. But can you take a closer look? Expressing himself well, does he add to performance on the job? So our number one focus should be on the performance of the job and all that is required for the person to perform the job. I think I see somebody raise his hands. I think I see somebody raise his hands. Who is that? Can you help me?
No, I was the one who raised my hands, but I had brought it down. Okay,
so you wanted to add? Would like to have your perspective. I know that you have a diverse experience, and so if you can break it down to us, how we can begin to make an SME, because most of the businesses we have around here are SMEs. How we can begin to put practices in place that will make an SME environment more inclusive, without necessarily talking about crash and, and all the laudable initiatives, something that we can begin to, practice almost immediately.
Actually, I like very simple things, so when big organizations do policies and initiatives and programs, it's great, it's nice, but I think I start from, being human, being curious about, the way people live and curiosity about other human beings. And so as HR, we've got to be curious about people. And as HR, we have to stop thinking about HR. We need to start thinking about people. And the first set of people to think about is the customers. It's the customers. And as HR, if you're not thinking about the customers, then you haven't started your work. So we think that we're hired to recruit, we're hired to train, we're hired to do. No, we were hired to support customers. And the way we support customers is by managing the processes that bring in the people who support customers. So for us to have those people who support customers, we need to understand who these customers are. What do these customers need? If we can make a case for doubling our customer, our customer base, and that means that if we've sliced and diced, why don't we have physically people living with disability as customers? What is it that we are doing that they are not coming to us for our services? Where are they going to? And why are they going there? Why do we have only male customers? Why don't we have women? Because the more that we can have of customers, the more that our business is going to grow. So you're selling, let's say, women's clothing, and it's only women that are coming to buy the clothing. But you also understand that when the men want to buy the clothing, sometimes they really do not look at the price tag and then they can buy it. So how do we attract the men to be able to buy the clothing? Where are the physically challenged women who can wear this clothing? Where are the women who are visually challenged or the men who are visually challenged who can wear this clothing? Until we start looking from the customer point of view, we will not modify our organizations to be able to bring in the customers. And that's what Maureen's been saying about inclusive society. So start from Where are the people in Nigeria and why are they not coming to me? If we can make that connection for business owners and see what we will do, what we have to do to be able to bring in, because remember, attracting them is the way we also attract our employees. Recruiting customers, we also recruit employees. So let's take those skills and then bring in those customers. If revenue increases, then it becomes easy to start looking at the programs that we have to do. So let's imagine that we've set a target for increasing our customer, doubling. If we had, let's imagine that we had 500 physically or people living with disability who were our customers. And then we want to double it, that's up to 1,000. If I was to double it, I will sit down with them, I will engage them in conversation in terms of what is it that we're doing that works for you? How else can we make this business work for you? How else can we serve you better? And then they will come up with, oh no, I can't even find where to park. I can't even, your stairs are very steep. Your door is very obscure, and then we can say, okay, so if we fix that, if we fix that and then the person, okay, he comes up the next time, oh, the stairs are not that high, enough for him to be able to come in, he's going to tell another person that, oh, I actually go to this place, there is a parking, you can park, and then they will help you, and then they can sort things out for you. Oh, by the way, if you go there, when you go to go and order things from them, their till actually says what it is and how much it is, so you do not have to imagine what they've put under their receipt. You don't have to have somebody who's going to go with you if you're visually challenged to be able to shop in that place. So by word of mouth, they start, talking to other people. So it starts with the customers to diversify your customer base. Then you must bring in people who look like customers. So if I come into your shop or into your business and I am served by somebody in a wheelchair and I'm in a wheelchair, there's already affinity in there. So, and we can, you understand some of my needs. You may not understand all because there are other diversity points. If you see a visually challenged person, okay, so the person is helping you through that transaction, you're more likely to be comfortable with that individual. So start with the customer, segment the customers, then bring in people who are like your customers, who look like your customers. And for you to bring in people who look like your customers, you've got to realize that people are people. People are people. Every other thing is physical. So like when we were young, you say tall, dark, and handsome. It doesn't matter. The heart of a man resides in tall, dark, and handsome. It resides in short, white, and bow leg. It resides in whatever, So the innate humanity of people does not change by the physical conditions or the physical housing that they are in. It's the spirit. And it is that spirit that we need to start recruiting for in people. And I'm very glad that we are all having the conversation about, does educational qualification matter anymore? So we've spent so much time on educational qualification and have left humanity, the spirit, the commitment that people bring. We hire the qualification, then have people who are not committed. So look for that commitment in people and find that commitment irrespective of the container that commitment sits in. And it starts with, as HR, we must do HR from the heart. So every time I say, we do HR from the heart, okay? So you start from the heart. I start from the premise that everybody is a human being and I'm curious about their life. So I see people in wheelchairs and I sit down and I have a conversation with them. So what's your experience like on a day-to-day basis? Where do you go? How do you get there? What will make life easy for you, to do all the things that you want to do? So right now, I consult a lot for the public sector, and I'm doing work for road transport, for Ministry of Transportation. Guess what? I am pushing, I'm an advocate for people living with disability. How are we going to create standards for our roads, for transportation? I'm pushing now for an audit of the Nigerian Railway Company to make sure that all our trains are accessible, irrespective of the disability that we are living with. And, we're trying, pushing for that, but it requires education for them. So we're looking for trainings and then trying to also bring in people who are living with disability to have the conversation with them. So those are the practical things that HR can do to help, in making, but it starts with the HR person being curious and understanding that people are different.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam. Thank you very much. So if you have questions, I've gone through the chat box. I don't seem to see any questions. All I see is comments. So if you have any question, you might want to raise your hand as we go over some of the questions that we have here. If you have any question and you want to have the floor, please can you raise your hand and we'll give your audience to ask your question.
Okay, Bironke, in there somewhere is a question around paternity leave, considering our cultural.
Okay. So let me try and locate that. I think the person was asking how visible the paternity leave is, considering the fact that male hardly help around the issue of raising a child. I don't know who wants to react to that. Is the managing director of Edo Jobs, is she available now? Can she take this particular question? Can you unmute her, please? Or can she unmute herself? You can, Nebo. Managing Director, Edo Jobs, is she available? Okay, I don't think so.
I don't think she's available now.
She's not available. Maureen, do you want to take that? I know that in organizations that I've worked, they've given paternity leave. I can't remember the number of days, but this particular person is asking if paternity leave is actually necessary, considering the fact that, men hardly help with, culturally, men hardly help with, with the kids at home.
Okay, culturally, men hardly help with. I don't know if it's a culture thing or something that has maybe over time we have seen it to be culturally acceptable. But I'm sure back in the days, even before I was born, somehow our fathers had their way of helping out, in training the kids or helping out around the home. May not be prominent, but then it's been there. So yes, I believe, I don't know if it's Lagos State government that is thinking about implementing such, or is it the federal government? I can't really remember. So I believe it is very necessary, it is feasible, but speaking about our clients now, I would say at the end of the day, yes, okay, the federal government has a policy on that. Okay, thank you, Ma. And so speaking about our clients now, I would say it would really have to do with the couple. So there's no tussle and tug of war about it. I have seen quite a few families where the men, they do enjoy going to their children's open day, taking their kids to crèche and bringing them back home. It happens these days. Yes, some of their friends may call them women rapper, as they call it, but then it's beginning to happen. And I believe it's here to stay, whether some people accept it or not. So somehow it has to do, another thing it has to do with is, I think the generational gap. But even with the generational gap, you still find Gen Z people think like, baby boomers and co. So, well, it's here to stay. I don't think we'll fight it. Some people be acceptable at some point or the other. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I know that, okay, so I see a lot of chats. I know that a lot of organizations, especially if you work in a standard structured organization, have these policies in place. And, for that period that your wife put to bed, she would definitely need a man. So for the typical African setting, you will have the naming maybe within that period. You need a lot of running around. So there are a million and one things why a man would need a paternity leave at that period, because really paternity leave is given immediately when the woman goes. So within that first week, the woman will need the support of the man. So I think that it is very, very necessary. I don't know.
Yes, and I would like to add that. Sorry, I would like to add that once we could change our mindset about the woman being the homemaker. If we could change our mindset about that, then we should understand. I mean, she didn't bear the child herself. The two of them brought for the child, so they will do it together. They should. So it should start.
Are you still there? Is it just me?
I think she's frozen.
Okay.
So my comment on that.
Okay.
My comment on that will be that, I really don't care what it is that the man does with the paternity leave. It's recognition of the fact that, his status has changed also as a father. And maybe with that time, he's able to provide support, or even with that time, he's able to reflect on what this change means for him, and that kind of thing. You cannot develop policies based on the people who will flout it, and that's one of the things I see in the organizations. They won't, people will not, people will do this, and because of it, we don't do the things that need to be done. We need to think in terms of there are people in the organization, because when we say men don't help, that's a generalization and a stereotyping. There are men who help, and we need to encourage some of those things. So also for HR, don't start a policy, they will not obey. So you now want to put all sorts of complicated things into it. Simply understand, a woman has had a child. There is a father who's also had a child. At least give him the paternity leave for him to go drink with his friends and enjoy the fact that he's a father. I really don't care what he does with it.
Thank you very much for that insight. Yes. Okay.
And then another thing, Ibironke, is I alluded to it. Men who are single fathers, we don't even think about it. We don't think about it. And men whose wives die in childbirth, we don't think about it. Then when we talk about maternity leave, the first question I always ask organizations when I'm talking to them is your maternity, how long is your maternity leave? They say, okay, 16 weeks. Is it for a single birth or multiple birth? Oh, no, it's for one pregnancy. I said, why? So if one pregnancy attracts 16 weeks, 2 gestations, that's twins, triplets, quadruplets, then what do you do? Have you ever had conversations with multiple birth people to understand the difficulty there is? So rather than say maternity leave is just 16 weeks, sit down and have that conversation around multiple births and what do we do? Now, stillbirth. When a woman has a stillbirth, is she entitled to the full maternity leave? What if she doesn't want it? Does she lose that whole maternity leave? So we need to start thinking, have conversations. So if I don't take the maternity leave, I want to come back to work after, the grief may hit 6 months later. Can I take that time off in 6 months? Organizations need to start thinking about making these things okay. And it's based on conversation.
Okay, so madam, So I'm trying, because you always bring a fresh perspective to this topic, and and that's where experience come into play. I really have to salute your
No, not experience, so it's humanity.
It also comes from wealth of experience. It comes from wealth of experience, because you've worked across different continents. You're able to bring fresh perspective to any of the questions. And I want to ask, is it possible to actually have an organization that is actually inclusive? Because from all of the things that you're saying, it's almost like it's impossible, because when you take just one aspect, it has like 15 different faces. So you're talking about paternity leave now, but you're talking about men whose child that who had a childbirth. What about those that had twins? What about those that have triplets? Should we treat them the same way? Should we give them consideration?
Okay, there's another. Just think about it. There's another one also. People who have preterm babies.
I was just going to say NICU babies. Yeah.
Yes. So if you have a preterm NICU babies, when does maternity leave start?
Wow. So is it possible that we actually have an organization that is that really practice an inclusive organization?
Never. I was going to say, you know why it's never? Why? Because there are things that are going to come up tomorrow that we did not envisage today. We can't see everything. So that's why a truly inclusive organization is an organization that constantly has conversations around diversity, around equity, around inclusion, and around belonging.
So we have to have an HR professional or a business owner that wears a human face, because some of these policies might not be readily applicable to every case. So we have to be treat it on a case-by-case basis.
That's why I don't like policies.
It's too
that's why I don't like
generalistic.
policies.
Smoothly.
Yes.
Policy,
because HR always hangs onto policy as if it's cast in stone. Policy is just a guide. It's just a guide. And so for each one, a good example, if a staff came to work, a staff of ours, we had a crash in Central Bank across the road. A staff of ours came to work and she didn't have any help and she wasn't registered in the crash. And she had the baby, she was holding the baby. And that was one of the days of HR handing out coffee and muffins, out in the morning to employees to just encourage them to come to work early. So standing out there, I see her with the baby and, she's struggling. She came to tell her boss she needs to go find, support for the baby. And she said, oh, she has a meeting. I said, no, give us the baby, go bring the baby's bag, bring the whatever. We will hold the baby as HR. And so, we turned my office into a creche, myself and my secretary, taking turns, to pacify the baby and stuff. So it's about being a person first. So a lot of times it's not, like I told you, I'm always asking questions. I'm very curious. Another complication is parents who are living with special needs children. We don't consider them in the organization and it creates issues. So we did have people living with sickle cell anemia, and my conversation with their bosses was, this has nothing, I'm born with it, It's like being born blind. It's by being born, without ability to hear. So that's the way it is, and, when they have crisis, you've got to accommodate it and you've got to care enough to understand the triggers and help the individual to also manage their triggers, So it's curiosity and taking time to actually get to know people and treat people as people. So I'm constantly asking, by the way, I'm not married, I don't have children, and people will say, oh, so then why are you such a champion of women and such a champion of children? Because I have had in a lot of conversations and I continue to have conversations. There are people living with domestic violence, And, you know, that's another group of people that we never, and then we, all of us pretend, you know, I really don't want to know, you know, that she's being abused, that kind of thing, you know, but those things have an impact. And if you are able to provide and get support for the person, you have a committed individual, a committed employee for life. So if there was one person who taught me about diversity, I have been going, I'm a diversity champion. The one person who taught me about diversity was Sanusi Lamido Sanusi. He told me, he said, Chizoba, the day you lose your humanity in human resources is the day the organization dies. Your job as human resources is to continue to be curious, listen to people, understand, and then come back to the organization to say, hey, you know, how can we help, you know, in building and getting the commitment of people.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for always bringing a fresh perspective to the topic at hand. I'd like to say that I'm available for adoption. You can adopt me. I would love to partake out of your humanity. Yeah. So at this point, please, before we run up, I think somebody raised a hand. I don't know if
Nayo Ugo.
Yes, Nayo Ugo, please. 1 minute, then we'll take the poll and we'll round up this.
By the way, Nayo is the executive director for, she tell us she just got promoted and she is a very powerhouse of human resources.
Okay, so she will also give us a fresh perspective.
Yes.
Is she available?
All right, sorry, thank you very much. Thanks, Chizzy. What I wanted to say, Chizzy has just spoken. I wanted to say that when it comes to policies, when it comes to principles in an organization, what happens is it's just down there like a framework to guide the processes. But when you manage people, you will have to manage people from the heart. There are lots of cases that you hadn't thought out when the policies were being crafted. And when they come up, how you deal with them is what is important. And those policies are cast in stone. And they change over time, and the needs come up every other day. Yes, you may not be changing them from time to time or like a monthly or daily, but there are situations that come up. As leader, you need to be strategic about them. And in being strategic, you just need to understand that the heart of business is the people, and how these people feel is what makes them committed to the organization. And so when you look at all of those things, it's about what does your heart say and not what does your head say. When you manage people from your head, you will just become an academic person, and all you do every time is, oh, the policy says there's a policy, and it doesn't show that you understand what your place is in that organization with regards to the people. So at every point in time, please look at it, and you are a decision maker. And being a decision maker means that you will look at, and that's why you have provisions for exceptional approvals, because there are diverse cases. And that's what happens again. And that's why you will always say, when we talk about diversity, inclusion, equality, and all of that, it's not just by word of mouth, it's in the practices that happen.
Thank you very much. I knew that I said I was going to be the last. Before I allow Catherine to speak, so I was going to ask, so if you say that you rule or you let the situation dictate, what happens if you treat somebody one way, then you treat another person that's going through the same thing another way? What happened? Don't you think people will begin to feel that you're being biased?
No, so that's why you talk about, when you talk about policies, you also talk about precedents. What are policies? Policies are most times precedents that have already been set. So when you set a precedence, you will need to include it. Precedents also become policies because, oh, this person had this condition and this was done. You set a precedent. And so it could be leveraged on and it could be referenced. Oh, whilst this happened, this was what was done, and that becomes a practice. And so practices.
That is also a policy. So indirectly, you're beginning to set new
correct.
policies. It now becomes a guideline.
it becomes a practice. And when it becomes a practice, you uphold it. And one thing you should never do is be seen to be favoring someone beyond the other. No, you must be able to strike the balance and deal with it as it ought to be done.
But Nayo, my argument is always that on the surface, people think we had the same issue. It's never true. Never
That's
true.
why so it's all about the diversity in it.
Yes. So when we take a decision, is to explain why we took the decision.
Correct.
And the practice that we have put in place. And then when we take a decision against something, let us also place all the information. So let's think about it. So I've got this employee of mine who's living with sickle cell anemia. Okay. And this employee always, very productive, does everything, goes off sick, comes back, high performer, high potential. Then I've got this other one who uses it as an excuse and never shows up for work. So there are things that I will do for that high potential, high performing employees that I will not do for this one. So the next thing they'll say is, oh, they did it because she has sickle cell anemia. No, I did it because this, and we need to explain to people. And I did do it in your case because of this. So people then now see that there are differences.
Okay,
as long as there are differences.
Yes, as long as there is transparency and everybody is able to know why there is a difference.
Yes.
Communication. Yeah, thank you very much. Catherine?
Yeah, so my question is this, and any of the panelists can take it. Chisabel, when you were speaking, and I think Adenike agreed with you, and we talked about policies, and I don't remember who it was that said, oh, I don't like policies, but the policies not at least create a standard as a minimum thing, because if we all just went and applied how we felt, someone else could have a different way of applying, or for some reason just doesn't see it the way you see it. Hasn't that now created like two different standards for dealing with the same thing? So I would argue that I think it would be great for as much as we can to have a policy that works as a minimum guide, or at least as a standard.
But the problem with it is that think about who set the policy. So I set it based on my reality and my generalization and the things that I know. So I set a policy for paternity leave because my husband is not at home, when I have babies. And so that's how other men. So policies on their own have biases, of the people who are sitting in them. And so if you do not have the people who are living with the situation, who you have consulted and, engaged, to get the right tone of policies and the conditions, for which that policy, then you're better off without a policy. Because I would rather have a policy that is not biased than have a policy that is biased. And by the way, is that Catherine? Is that what she called you?
Yes, Catherine.
I think you are a very beautiful person. I've been staring at your face all morning.
Thank you. I did my makeup.
Yes, and it looks really good. So
thank you.
For policies, I don't know, maybe because I'm a rebel, I'm very rebellious. If you say this is the rule, I would like to break it. So I like to prefer to call them as guidelines. Guidelines. I prefer to call them as principles. So what's the principle? The principle is we will treat people like people. And so in treating people like people, what does that mean? I will listen to you, I will hear you out, and we will figure out how we can do things based on the other guiding principles, that we have.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Thank you very, very much. So at this point, we need to take a poll, a survey. And it's around promoting inclusion, equality, and diversity in the place of work. How do we think that organizations can begin to promote a diverse place of work? I think Winifred has provided a link to that survey. It will help us. We will share the results with you later on so that you can also take it back to your organization and see how you can implement, some of these things. Okay, so before we wrap up, I would still like to take a comment from one of the panelists that hasn't said anything since we started. That's the managing director of Edo Jobs. Is she available now?
I don't think she's here, but there's someone who I would really love to recognize because of her involvement and her contribution, like from day one, and that's Sheyi Ladejobi. Sheyi has been, with us since we're trying to organize this event, and well, some of the panelists will know how it got moved from time to time. So I'd really just like to hear from Sheyi today.
Oh, she's already clapping for herself.
Well done. Interesting conversation. I'm so excited this came up, and thank you so much, everybody. I think that's it. Interesting conversation. Love the comments, love the chat, and I'm happy. Like we always say, it's important to start. You have started, and the most important thing is for the awareness to continue so that we can continue to have diversity as a conversation when it comes to the workplace. So thank you very much for putting this together. So happy. I've been grinning since I had 2 meetings on the phone, but I said, no, I have to be here. Good work. Well done to the team.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sheyi, we go way. By the way, she was the one that recommended me to be the moderator for this program. So she's my very close friend. We've been colleagues, but now we're friends. Yeah, so I want to believe that we're filling the survey right now. It will really help us. So as we begin to bring this program to a close, is there anybody that would like to say anything just before I give my final statement and we invite Catherine to give a closing remark? So for me, the takeaway will be that, okay, somebody is raising his or her hand. Who is that?
Fidelia.
Fidelia, okay, so please, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's morning where I am. I just want to echo what Sheyi has said, that I've been grinning to. Well done to our panelists. I think they've done justice. I think they surpassed our expectation, because when we started this, or rather when we bettered this plan, I think we're looking at it from the lens of people living with disability. But they've covered almost all the spectrums of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. And just amazing, because sometimes we get blindsided by just our personal challenges that we don't recognize that there are others who have challenges too. And that needs to be taken into consideration when we are talking about actually practicing a workplace that is diverse and inclusive and there's equity. So amazing from the panelists. I also want to, I know that I want to be biased because I have sickle cell, but to be honest, I also want to look at it from the perspective of the workplace, the employer too, because where I'm going with my conversation is, as a nation, I think the government has a role to play in ensuring that our workplaces actually have an environment that is inclusive. Because, for instance, for someone living with sickle cell, there could come times where you are off work for a month, 2 months. It's not fair to say you get paid or you get paid. So in an advanced setting, what happens is, even in an advanced setting, you don't get paid for those times. But you have, there are policies, so like, for instance, there's insurance, there's critical health insurance, or disability insurance, or something else that takes care of you at that point. So our government also has a role to play in ensuring that our workplaces can even provide these accommodations to have people with disability or medical condition, and just ensure that we have a workplace that is inclusive and diverse. I guess that's my point.
Thank you very much, Fidelia. Yeah. Okay. So I want to believe that we've all filled the survey. So in closing, I would say that the take home for me is the fact that there is so much more to diversity than what I entered this conference with, the ed knowledge that I had. It's so broad, and it is almost impossible for an organization to actually achieve a totally inclusive environment. But we can begin, we can take baby steps. And that's why I was trying to lay emphasis on SMEs, because we have a lot of SMEs around us. And I would talk from the perspective of just generally taking a look at some of the jobs and some of the vacancies that we have in our organizations. So the requirements that we stated and the ones that are not written, the written and the unwritten requirements, are they really necessary to fill those positions that we've been trying to fill? Let's begin to take some of those baby steps, and we will find out that we will have more inclusive environments where people are more productive. We might not have all the resources to be a Google or to be an Apple. We might not have all the resources to be a tech company, but we can begin to take steps. And some of those steps start from looking at the JD, looking at what is required to perform a job, and seeing and being true to ourselves whether all of those requirements are really genuinely necessary to fill those roles. Because if we look at them, those millions of jobs that remain unfilled annually, we will be able to reduce those numbers, and we will be able to provide opportunities to people that we've discriminated against. All of us, we discriminate, whether knowingly or unknowingly, we do. For some of us, it is programmed, but for some of us, it is the environment has conditioned us to think in a certain way. When somebody is sitting in front of you and you're interviewing the person, if the person doesn't do some particular gesture, you automatically assume that the person is slow or that the person doesn't have the capacity to perform the job. Let's wear human face. We might not be a chizoba the day we start, but we can take steps to begin to work towards becoming a chizoba one day. And really, I still mean it. I think I want chizoba to adopt me. Thank you very much, everybody, for what will I say, an explosive conversation. At this point, I will hand over the floor to Winifred. Oh, Catherine,
Winifred, do you want to? Okay.
You give the closing remark. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So I'm usually not the greatest with giving closing remarks because I just like it to flow from the conversation. And I think it's been an amazing, like Fidelia said, it's surpassed what we expected. So thank you so much to the panelists for all your comments, your expertise. The keynote speaker, I mean, I could listen to Adenike forever. So again, I'd like Adenike to adopt me too, in the spirit of Ibironke. So thank you so much. I think I've been amazed at how broad-minded the speakers have been. I didn't expect it, to be honest, because like Maureen mentioned, how inclusive is our society? Sometimes it doesn't seem that we are, but I think this panel or this event has shown me that we actually are. It's very nice to see HR being practiced with a heart. I wonder if the HR from heart, maybe it was a deliberate thing, who knows, but that's just me. So thank you very much, our HR managers who are here as well. And I hope it's been very productive for you. I hope that you found things that you can take back to your organizations. I want to, sorry, I made notes, so I'm just referring back to my notes. It's nice to see that there's a willingness to improve things, because that's why we would have had the kind of participation that we have today. So thank you everyone for the amazing conversations. And I'd like to encourage us, as you know what, Chizoba, like when you were speaking, one of the notes I had made before was to say at the end of this, to encourage everyone to be broad-minded when we're talking about inclusion. But I don't need to say that anymore because you've done all that work for me. So thank you very much. I'd like us to also realize, especially like for the people living with, disabilities, or however we want to term it, to also be broad-minded when we're talking about these situations, because not all disabilities are obvious. Chisba mentioned arthritis, Maureen mentioned sickle cell. And the truth of the matter is, with these conditions, you just often get like flare-ups. So they may be well today, they may be all right today. And then the next thing, they're not well, and they're not able to perform at that time. So it's making these adjustments, shifting our perspectives as well. As Maureen has said many times, that we need to, change our mindset, broaden our horizon, continue to challenge the narrative, continue to challenge what you think, and be willing to accept, be willing to learn. Chizoba mentioned a lot about being curious. Be curious, because it's only with curiosity that we become more creative, more accepting. And really, as a society, we do need to be more inclusive as a society. Charity begins at home. You can't be nicer to people at work when you're nasty to people in the society. So it's a concerted effort. And I still maintain that I think we can have a standard. I mean, we've had so many HR practitioners here today. I think this conversation needs to carry on. I think HR managers need to always get together, because some people may not know this. Some people don't have the exposure that you have. So I think like an exchange of knowledge will go a long way to improve our society, because it's a win-win. If you have staff who are not, have limitations, if you can help them thrive, if you can help them go through whatever it is they're going through while still getting the best out of them, it's a win-win for you, for your company, for the staff. So once again, thank you everyone, and thank you to the Tonymay team. We've been planning this since last year, and finally it's happened. A lot has gone into all of this. I want to say thank you also to the team. I want to say thank you to our trustees who have supported us. And like I've said, please, let's make this conversation continue. Let's just not let it stop. So thank you very much again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, everybody, for making my job easy. It was a good conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
It was brilliant. Thank you.
Did you record this?
It's on YouTube.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Yeah. Send me the link.
Usually after conversations like this, I always tell them there's a party after a party.
There's a party.